We're going to talk today about condominiums, co-ops, timeshares, and real estate investments. Condos. I remember being a youngster in Cincinnati when they first built condos and they offered them for sale, and we'd go to them and we thought they were really neat and nice, but then we thought to ourselves, why would you want to own a condo and then have to pay this monthly fee for maintenance? Well, as condos have become more and more prevalent, we realize that people don't want to have to be responsible for their yard care, for the building maintenance. They'd rather pay a monthly fee, and the condominium ownership works out for a lot of people. And the reason they prefer condominium ownership over a co-op or something like that is they get the deed to it, but they also enjoy tax benefits for as long as we're going to be able to enjoy the tax benefits of a condominium. So a condo is a fee simple ownership of one unit of a multiple unit structure, combined with an ownership of undivided interest in the land and all other parts of the structure, held as tenants in common, with the owners of other individual units in the structure. So when we talked about that tenants in common before, a condominium is a perfect example of how a tenant in common might work for residential. You don't think of it as a tenant in common, but that's something else that's going on behind the scenes with that whole ownership of a condo. The condominium is formed. The developer can purchase existing multiple-family apartment buildings for conversion, or they can purchase land and erect a structure. The individual unit purchaser attains fee simple interest in the unit, and the tenant in common owner of the common owner elements. So as a tenant in common, they own part of the grounds, part of the roof, part of the primary structure of the building. Any of the recreation areas, parking areas, things like that are all part of that tenant in common ownership of common elements. And they also share in the maintenance costs and responsibilities of those common elements. The developer may obtain construction mortgage, and the individual unit owner obtains their own mortgage to buy their piece, their share. The condominium has a declaration, one of three documents commonly mandated by state law, which must accompany and be recorded with a master deed for the condominium development. It's required for both new construction and conversion. It's filed with the county where the property is located. So when you look at the declaration document, it'll have filing stamps on it, just like a deed or a mortgage does, because you can see where it's filed in the county. It becomes public record. Everybody can see what the condo declaration is. It contains the legal description of the property, general description of each unit, description of any area that is subject to limited control, and a description of the common areas and each apartment's fractional interest in the condominium regime. So it tells you how is it going to be run, what's your responsibility for ownership, for payment, portion, percentage, pro rata share, things like that. And they can also contain restrictive covenants, such as the association's right of first refusal to buy it, but more restrictive covenants that we see in condo associations is you can't put fences up, you can't store vehicles on the lot, you can't work on a lot, you can't have pets in a certain area, things like that that control how you're using the piece of real estate would be the restrictive covenants. The bylaws, the rules governing the internal operation of the condominium development. So how do you get a board of directors? How do you pay somebody to run, and what rights do you have to pay somebody to run the condo association, to collect fees, to make decisions about managing it? Those are the bylaws. Rules and regulations give more detail to the bylaws. They apply to the property owners, their guests, tenants, and visitors. The rules of conduct. How do you live here? What can you do? These are all documents. If you have a client who's interested in selling or interested in buying a condominium unit, you need to get to see these bylaws, these rules, these declarations, and understand what they are. They're perfect bedtime reading material. They're voluminous, in other words, 40 to 100 and something pages. And every time the property sells, when you go to a closing, you should get copies of all of these pieces of information, so that you see the rules of engagement, how you're going to live and how you're going to live at this property, how you're going to pay fees, and what's expected of you as a resident to be an ownership interest there. The individual unit has a deed, so they get a condo unit in the development deed, much like you would buying a house, you get a deed, but the deed only describes the physical interior walls of what you own, and then it'll describe the common elements that you own. Common elements are parts of the development of the property that are necessary or convenient for the residents of the condominium are owned in common by all the condo residents. So it's the hallways, it's the walkways, it's the parking area, it's the recreational facilities, the pool, the clubhouse, all the things that are there that are not within the walls of the unit you own are considered common elements. The exterior walls, the roof, everything that you share with the other owners to maintain and take care of. They generally include hallways, elevators, recreational facilities, land, and so on. There's a percent attributed to each unit. It's designated in the declaration. This can be by square footage, by level of the unit, how high you are in the building. A lot of different things can talk about how the pro rata share is described and arrived at. The general common elements are shared by all owners. Limited common elements are shared by less than all unit owners. And for instance, if you have a penthouse or an upper floor unit, and only those people are entitled to go onto the roof garden, that might not be part of your own unit, but you have to live in a certain level above to be able to get access to the roof garden, that might be a limited common element, and therefore not everybody would be required to pay for maintenance for that. The expenses of administering, maintaining, repairing, and replacing common elements generally borne by an assessment of unit owners made by the board of directors of the association. So the board of directors, they don't like to do assessments there are huge assessments that are done at one time. Generally, when you run a condominium association, you know well in advance when capital improvements are going to be necessary. You're putting enough money away. You're estimating those assessments on a routine, regular basis, so you're collecting money. So you don't have to do special assessments. But occasionally there are emergencies, things that happen that need repair, and you go back to the unit owners for special assessments. And all of these rules tell you how you can collect and what you could do to get those. The Condo Association is an organization stipulated by statute to administer to the operation of the common elements of the condominium. There's a board of directors that carry out the business of caring for the condo. If you want to be on the board of directors, I advise you go to the condominium meeting, be responsive, be reactive, speak up, and don't step back quick enough when they're putting people on the board, and you will become a member of the board of directors, whether you like it or not. Members of the board have a fiduciary responsibility and are legally liable for the mismanagement of this association, but they're responsible to all the other owners as well as how they manage and govern the association. The associations are quasi-governmental and subject to prescriptions of Constitution. The reason we talk about them being quasi-governmental is if you don't pay your condo fees, they can file liens against the unit itself. And eventually they could force a foreclosure or a sale of the unit to get fees money back, or bring that back to the condo association so that they can resell the unit and get their monies back for fees or things that are owned for the maintenance and repair of the units. Assessments. They're regular monthly payments for upkeep of the common elements, as well as payments required for special expenses or improvements to those common elements. They're both regular and special assessments are made. Bylaws usually place establishment assessments on the association or its board. How do they establish them? What's their limit to money? How many bids do they have to get? How do they operate it? The refusal to pay the assessments can result in enforcement procedures and become a lien on the property, which then can be foreclosed at foreclosure sale, which we just talked about. A co-op is different than a condominium. In a co-op, it's a corporation that owns the whole building. And we don't see co-ops in the Ohio-Cincinnati market often. Where we do see them is New York. We see them in Florida a lot now because New Yorkers traveled south. We see them in Chicago. We see them in more urban areas, bigger areas, cities where people are used to this form of ownership. And it's not to say, financing co-ops is very common in those big cities. In Ohio, not so common. But there are mortgage companies, there are lenders, there are people that deal specifically with co-op financing. It's easy for them. They do it routinely and they know how to do it. In the individual unit, residents own stock in the corporation. They have a proprietary lease for the specific unit or apartment. So they don't get a deed, they get a stock certificate. The cooperative tenants participate in running the co-op through their stock interest in their corporation. Through their stock interest, much like owning a company, your stock interest talks about your pro rata share. How much power do you have to vote to get things done? Does a 400 square foot unit get the same power as a 4,000 square foot unit? Absolutely not. So that participation in the stock and how your stock ownership is granted is based on how much of a unit, how big is the unit, the pro rata share. Financing co-op, like I said, typically investor purchasers, multiple unit building converts it into a co-op. The investor takes out a mortgage for 80% of the dwelling's value. The cooperative owners buy in by paying a share of the remaining 20%, for which they receive stock issued in a cooperative corporation. The co-op owners make monthly payments to cover the share of the mortgage, operating expenses, and any other debt, taxes, and operating expenses. Much like a condo fee, they have a co-op fee. So the differences between co-ops and condos. Condominium unit owner obtains their own mortgage, and a cooperative blanket mortgage finances the entire building. The ability to sell, sublet, or succession of death is more stringent for a co-op. Co-ops have the ability to ignore a lot of fair housing. Co-ops get to judge everybody who wants to be an owner of the unit. They look at not only their physical nature, but their financial backing, their character references, all kinds of things go into making choices as to whether they're willing to let somebody live in a co-op unit. Some of our most famous actors and actresses have been refused the ability to live in co-ops if they wanted to in New York because the other owners of the building, people that live there, didn't want the paparazzi hanging out at their doorstep every day. So Madonna and other famous people have been told no, they could not live where they thought they wanted to live because the other owners of the co-op just didn't want to be bound by that. So the ability to sell, sublet, or succession of death is more stringent for a co-op because very often it doesn't go down through a family, but it'll come back to the co-op. They have a right of first refusal to sell those units. Not that they want them back, but they want to control who's going to live there eventually. The condo owner enjoys security and psychological benefits of fee simple. So the condo owner can sell anytime they want to anybody they want as long as it's a legal use. And if a condo owner dies, it'll pass to their beneficiaries. The condo owner may sell at a market value while co-ops must sell back to the corporation at a stipulated price. That's all agreed upon at the time you buy. Now, the prices of the units go up dramatically, and therefore when you own a co-op, you might not get to see the ability to capture on that appreciation. The ouster of incompatible tenant is much easier in a co-op. They force them out. They want to buy the unit back and they force them out. A condo, they have to force them to sell. Not so easily done. Timeshare. Again, many of you may have family members that had timeshares where you used to go vacation. Includes different types of ownership ranging from interest in real property to mere rights to use the unit. There are many variations of tenancy in common, and others are variations of co-ops, depending upon how it was organized, what state it's in, all those kind of things. Includes variations of time allocations. And there's misleading marketing that has led some states to enact legislation specific to timeshares, because a lot of people buy timeshares thinking that it might be an investment, where they're entitled to use it for a certain number of weeks per year, but in reality, they're saying, no, I'm not going to use it. I want to rent it out. I'm not going to ever go there, but I want to be able to recoup my money and make some profit on this. So it can become an investment vehicle for them. So we watch those kind of things as well. Timeshares. I remember being a little girl going on vacation, and my mom and dad would often get time to stay at a certain place or eat a dinner somewhere or something like that so that they could see the timeshare presentation. And you used to go to the timeshare, visit the timeshare, and that was where you got your timeshare allocated, was at that specific piece of property. Today, a lot of the timeshares are owned by large corporations that might have timeshare units all over the world. So when you buy in, you're not limited to using that 2 weeks at that particular piece of property. You have that 2 weeks, and you can travel anywhere in the world as long as you book and use their reservation policy to be able to use your timeshare wherever you want within their pricing structure. So timeshares, again, it's a great investment for somebody that wants a guaranteed vacation somewhere. They buy into the timeshare. They know they're going to be able to stay at this luxury type unit or what to expect when they go there. And they may want to go to the same place every year. Some people enjoy doing that for their vacation, and it works fine. And that way they can own a place and go to that fancy island or something, but know that they're going to have a place to stay every time they want to come back. So timeshares work for various people for various reasons. Forms of ownership. Real estate syndications are varied, including partnerships, limited partnerships, and corporations, each offering advantages and disadvantages to the real estate syndicate portion. The properties that I manage today are owned by REITs, real estate investment trusts, and anybody can own a share of a real estate investment trust, but they're sold on the stock market. But the REITs, in order to stay REITs, have to give up a certain percentage of their income every year back to their shareholders. It's very governed in how they operate and what they do to be considered and to be able to remain a REIT. But REITs are very hungry animals. They are buying and developing. Very often they pay more for a piece of real estate than it may be worth because they're looking at the appreciation value and what they can do to make the property worth more. They're buying on the whole prospect that they're going to make it worth more and end up making it a valuable piece of an asset for their investors. So again, this real estate investment trust is a tax shelter that exempts certain qualified real estate investment syndications from corporate taxes, where 95% or more of the ordinary income is distributed usually to the beneficiaries or the investors of that REIT trust. So again, every year they're having to distribute the income back. It's very heavily regulated industry. There's a lot of people, accountants and lawyers involved in running and watching what's being done by that trust every year to be able to make sure it stays a trust and it's living by its rules. And that's it for the forms of ownership.